Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's talk about crypto mining. It's a term you've probably heard a million times, but what does it actually mean? We're going to cut through all the jargon today and get right to the heart of what it is, how it really works, and most importantly, why you should even care.
So let's just jump right in and tackle the biggest myth from the get-go. I mean, when you hear mining, your brain probably goes straight to, digging for gold, right? Or maybe creating digital money from nothing? But what if that's not really the point? What if its main job is something else entirely?
The truth is, that word mining is, well, it's kind of misleading. The real goal, especially for big networks like Bitcoin that run on something called proof of work, isn't just about making new coins. It's about performing two super important jobs for the entire network. And that phrase, proof of work, it's pretty literal. The network needs to see proof that real, costly computational work has been done. That's what keeps everything honest and secure.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of what a crypto miner really does. What are those two big jobs? Let's break them down.
All right, job number one is block production. Imagine miners as a whole army of super competitive accountants. They're all grabbing the latest transactions, and it's a mad dash to see who can be the first to organize them, verify them, and add a new page to this giant shared digital ledger. Then there's job number two, network security. And this is the key. This whole competition is designed to be incredibly expensive. It costs real money for electricity and powerful computers. And that cost is actually the security feature. It makes it way too expensive for anyone to cheat or try to rewrite history. And this quote just nails it. The real product of all this mining, all this work, it's not the coins. It's consensus. It's agreement. All that electricity and computing power is being spent to create a single, shared, undeniable history of transactions. That's the bedrock of the whole system.
So now let's talk about the money. I mean, if these miners are spending a fortune to secure the network, they've got to get paid, right? This is where it gets really interesting, because it's a constant balancing act.
So how do they actually make money? Well, it comes from two places. First, you've got the block reward. This is basically the prize for winning the race to add the next block. A batch of brand new coins fresh off the digital press. And second, you have transaction fees. These are like little tips that people add to their transactions to convince a miner to include them in the next block. Kind of like paying for priority shipping.
But here's the catch. That revenue doesn't just go into their pocket. It gets eaten up by some huge cost. And the number one killer? Electricity. It's by far the single biggest expense. Then you have to buy the crazy expensive specialized computers, build out entire facilities to host and cool them, pay for maintenance. I mean, we're talking about running a full-blown 24/7 industrial data center. It's no joke.
And this is where that economic puzzle creates this fascinating feedback loop. When the price of, say, Bitcoin goes up, mining suddenly gets more profitable. And what happens when something's profitable? More people jump in. And you can see it right here. This chart shows the total computing power of the whole network, the hash rate, and it has just gone absolutely vertical over the last few years.
But here's the genius part. The network has this automatic balancing mechanism, like a thermostat. Bitcoin, for example, is designed to find a new block about every 10 minutes. So if all these new miners join and start finding blocks too fast, say every 5 minutes, the network automatically makes the puzzle harder. It ratchets up the difficulty, keeping that 10-minute rhythm steady.
And you guessed it, this constant cycle of more competition and higher difficulty kicked off a full-blown hardware arms race. What started as a hobby for nerds on their desktops has morphed into a massive industrial-scale enterprise.
It's pretty wild to look back. In the early days, you could literally mine Bitcoin with the processor, the CPU, in your laptop. Then, pretty quickly, people figured out that GPUs, the powerful graphics cards for gaming, were way, way better at it. But that was just a phase. The real game changer was the ASIC. These are hyper-specialized chips built to do one thing and one thing only, mine crypto. And they do it so efficiently that they made everything else completely useless for mining overnight.
So you might be thinking, okay, if there are these giant corporations with warehouses full of these supercomputers, how on earth can a little guy with one or two machines even stand a chance? And that's a great question. The answer is, they don't try to compete alone.
They team up. They join what are called mining pools. Think of it like this. Mining on your own is like trying to win the Powerball lottery. Your chances are tiny. But a mining pool is like an office lottery pool. Thousands of miners all combine their power, and together they have a much better chance of finding a block. When the pool ends, everybody who contributed gets a small piece of the prize. It changes mining from a crazy gamble into a much more predictable, steady income.
Okay, but running all this high-powered hardware 24/7 all around the globe, that has a massive consequence. And it brings us to probably the single most controversial thing about mining, the energy debate.
Now, the critics have a very strong point. The entire security model of proof of work is, by design, incredibly energy intensive. There's no getting around that. And its environmental impact really just depends on where the miners are. I mean, if they're plugging into a coal-fired plant, that's one story. If it's a hydro dam, that's another. And yeah, in some places, these huge mining operations can put a real strain on the local power supply.
But there's another side to this. Proponents argue that, look, this energy is the price you pay for a truly decentralized and secure network worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And here's a fascinating twist. Because miners' biggest cost is electricity, they are constantly hunting for the absolute cheapest power on Earth. And sometimes that cheapest power is stranded energy, like excess power from a remote wind farm or a hydro dam that can't be used by the grid. Miners can actually show up and use that wasted energy. But then, something huge happened that completely changed the conversation. Ethereum, the second biggest crypto out there, did something radical. It switched off its mining machines and moved to a totally different system called proof of stake. Now, instead of burning energy, validators lock up their own crypto as collateral to secure the network. And the result? An estimated 99.95% drop in energy use. Just gone. It proved that there are other ways to do this.
Okay, last section, and this one is really important. We need to talk about the risks, the scams, and the reality of this space. Because the #1 way newcomers lose money trying to mine is by falling for the promise of easy money.
I guarantee you've seen ads that look just like this. It's called cloud mining, and the pitch is so tempting, right? No expensive hardware, no crazy electric bills. You just pay a company to rent their miners, and then you sit back and collect passive income. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it?
Well, it almost always is. Here's what you have to remember. Just ask yourself this one critical question. If their mining operation was actually that profitable, why would they ever rent it out to you? Why wouldn't they just keep all the money for themselves? The answer is they would. With these services, you have no way of knowing if the machines are real, what their real costs are, or anything. A huge number of them are just flat-out scams.
And that brings us to the most important takeaway of this entire explainer. For the vast majority of people, crypto mining is something that is much better to understand than it is to actually try and do. Understanding the why behind it is powerful knowledge, but attempting to do it for profit, that's not a side hustle, it's an incredibly risky, full-scale industrial business. So that leaves us with the big, lingering question. Is this whole proof-of-work system, with all of its massive energy costs and hardware demands, a necessary price for the ultimate, battle-tested security that a network like Bitcoin provides? Or, now that we have alternatives like proof of stake, is it an amazing innovation that's already becoming obsolete? That's the fundamental debate that's going to define